From So Street Studios in the city of Merribeck, one community, proudly diverse, Hot Whoppers Appreciation Society proudly presents Salty and the Champ. Featuring Ned Saltman Chobson and Dave the People's Champ Erickson. Me, I am the announcer of the podcast, Miguel Gonzalez. Thank you for listening today. Now, over to you, Salty and the Champ.
Alright, we're back once again for another episode of Salty and the Champ. I'm the Salt Man. I'm just going to start going by the Salt Man.
Yeah, why not? I'm the champ.
And the Champ.
The people's champ.
The People's Champ. The People's Champ, Davey boy. There it is. And then off they go. I think I'm going pretty good. Getting this shit down now.
Yep.
I'm just turning that down. So the first recording still, as you can see, the same getup, the same clothes. So that would indicate that we're in the same session. And
we are not very good at laundry.
Laundry is not a thing we're doing. But no, we're all recording now, and I think we've got about 100 and coming up on 100 minutes, probably about 80 to 90 minutes of content now, and aiming for another 30, 40, 50 minutes perhaps. Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, sweet. Fucking, I'm feeling pretty good about it. Yourself?
Yeah. It's been good.
Just looking, making sure all the lines are good. The lines are good. The numbers. Usually don't know the numbers yet, but the buttons look good. Hope the numbers look good. Hope we've got. I mean, the best we could hope for is like the whole of the Whoppers chat tuning in.
What's that about? Like 16, 17?
Something like that. Yeah. Top numbers would be like 16 views on it. So, look, that'd be good. That'd be good. 16 views is 16 views.
Yeah.
32 sets of 32 eyes and 32 ears that we've attracted with our shenanigans.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great if we can achieve that. So yeah, we've got. I'll just say we'll say hello again to a couple of fellas we haven't sort of seen lately, and that's the little highs. And I've got the beer in the shot there as well. We've got Salty and the Champ brewskis there. I'll just get the lighter out of the way. Don't want that in there. And then we've also got little Termy Brereton. If you want to just spin around, Dave, there he is. Termy Brereton.
Just hanging out.
Back there. Both big in the 80s. That's good. It's good to have them back. Oh, the song came back as well. So yeah, we left off our last episode. Our last little section was... Let's get the rest of that song down. There we go. We talked a little bit about the saga. Talked about how... Well, we didn't talk about it. We talked about, what we plan to talk about today, which, is the same day, but we talked about for this episode.
Yes.
So talking about the next 10 minutes.
Yeah.
We're going to revisit that now and get into it in a little bit more detail. Now, I think we can probably start on the day this all broke, which, do you remember, we encountered each other?
Did we?
We did indeed.
I don't remember.
You don't remember that? So that was 2013, obviously. Yeah. February 6th.
Right.
2013. And a press conference with Demetrio, Evans, and Heard.
Yep.
The famous press conference that started the whole thing.
Evans was that Mark Evans who was like your CEO or something at the time?
I think David Evans.
David Evans, right? Yeah.
I think I could check. We can correct all this stuff.
We can, yeah.
If any of it turns out wrong, but essentially that was for the public at least the starting point of all this.
Yeah,
and it was during the day, because I was at work, and I remember, we encountered each other at the building I worked at.
I think I was getting a white card, like a union white card, to do some traffic management work.
Okay,
yeah,
there you go.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know what else happened in that building. We're talking about somewhere in St Kilda Road.
Yeah. I do remember now. Yeah,
424, 434 around there. So that was the building. I don't know what other businesses. This is when I was working at a company called Diversified Exhibitions. This is a good crew. Worked with a good crew, but The business was didn't really like the business. Had a lot of people in there, but it was a good crew. And yeah, I remember often going down to the 7-Eleven to pick up a little treat. And on one of those occasions, I saw you, and I said something along the lines of, hey, what's going on? How you going? What's going on? As you do when you encounter someone. And I said, just stressing about the Bombers, mate. Just stressing about the Bombers, mate. Because I was, and I'll just bring it back there. I was stressing about them. And it turned out that was essentially founded, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was a stressful period.
Long couple of years of stress, I would imagine.
Yep. Shocking. A shocking period, Dave.
Yeah.
Nothing like that had happened in sport before. No press conference like that had happened in AFL. Took everybody by storm. Everyone that was a footy person, and of course, especially Essendon people, were very, very alarmed that day. I don't remember the Whoppers chat existing back then. I don't think it did. I think it must have come about a few years after that, because if it did, of course, it would have been the biggest day.
It would have exploded
on that chat. It's history. Yeah, it would have exploded.
Maybe Messenger wasn't even a thing back then.
There must have been, but I don't think group chats were as big.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, that was early February. So before the season had even started. And then went into. Now I don't want to do a big recap like we said last time.
Yeah.
We're not aiming to change minds. We're not going to inform anybody. We don't know details that the public doesn't know. We're not investigative reporters or anything like that.
Yep.
So don't look for, we're not looking to do that. But we are just looking to maybe add, perhaps from opposing sides of the, of the argument.
Yep.
A little bit of opinion.
Sure.
That's all, all we're looking to sort of achieve here.
Yep.
And obviously I'm coming at it from the, and that's what I'm not sure if you noticed here, Dave, but that's what the famous.
Oh, the whatever it takes. Yeah.
This is from 2013. It's a member scarf from 2013.
Yep.
Whatever it takes, whatever it took. So obviously weren't referring to illegal peptides. When we coined that,
it's ironic though, isn't it?
that slogan, but having that the year that this scandal broke was not a good look. So away that went. I remember some pretty funny vision, not at the time, but upon reflection, it was funny.
Yeah,
funny vision of some people scraping down some banners at Windy Hill.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes. No, not quite. Well, maybe a little bit more. So yeah. So what were initial kind of impressions for you as I want to say as an unbiased kind of observer, but not really, because you don't like Essendon, so you have interest, you have personal interest in the downfall of the club.
Absolutely.
You're invested in the downfall.
Yeah.
So you can't
I love to hate the Bombrays.
You love to hate them, so you wouldn't say you're truly unbiased observer.
No.
So from that perspective then, what were your first thoughts on the saga breaking?
I was shocked. It was like a wow, and shortly followed by an overwhelming sense of glee.
Restrained jubilation, although not so restrained.
Yeah. Because I just thought to myself, I'm going to get a lot of content out of this.
Yeah, well, sure.
Yeah.
You and many others. Hyenas, really.
Yeah.
Vultures,
jackals. Yeah.
Attacking, carcasses,
feeding on a mediocre carcass,
rotting corpse of the shell of a once great club.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, so that was a tough time, tough, and we knew it was tough days ahead. And there was some really outlandish things being said in those early days when we weren't too sure what was going to happen and how big it was. There were people, and not like uninformed people, but people that knew footy that were saying stuff like, "Oh, this could be the end of the club."
But that's the footy media, right?
Yeah.
That's like what I've sort of talked about briefly previously about the AFL's this like overly corporatized thing, and there's a media machine that goes with that, right? And they need content so that SEN can run 24 hours a day and Fox can run 15 footy shows a week, and
Right.
40, 50 different journalists can stay employed. They've got to put content out constantly, so it's just speculate. Like Kane Corn says 10 times a week that this is the end of some player's career, or this bloke's a superstar, right? Or what's his face? Who's that sliding doors dude?
What's his name?
Purple.
Damien. I was going to say Damien Peveril. Damien. Purple.
Yeah, they come out with like 50 stupid takes a week,
Barrett,
right?
that's
Just to create content, and
sensational.
that was like they see that and they're like, "Fuck, wow, we've got like months and months and months of work of like easy work ahead of us because we can just speculate about what's going to happen."
It was like it didn't take long for it to become a media circus. Because it was like, again, there was no sort of story like that before, and
well, it's huge.
Yeah.
It at the time it was like enormous.
Yeah, it was, and for because footy is unique in that it's such a huge thing in such a small area.
Yeah.
Like you can thrive off in a city. You can thrive off just being footy media, and you can go, obviously you get intoxicated on that. It probably couldn't have happened like anywhere else, perhaps with any other any other sport in the world, except with sort of footy in Melbourne.
Yeah,
that this kind of level of interest in just the players' lives, and just like there's like camps of reporters at Windy Hill, at all the key players' driveways every morning, especially Herd for about 2 years non-stop. That's what I think was really crazy. And obviously, talk about like the whole, the reason why they were there, like the issues with the supplements program. But it spawned some shit that was just like way worse in a lot of ways, I think. Than what was alleged and what has potential sort of outcomes from it, I think. In our pursuit of, or in the interest of footy media and that next story and selling papers and getting clicks on headlines, pushed the man to the brink, pushed Hurdy to the brink. Like he had some bad times after that. I obviously don't want to make jokes about that or anything.
Yeah.
But couldn't have, or perhaps couldn't have happened anywhere else to any other play or at any other point or place. Other than footy obsessed Melbourne. Like it's got perhaps an unhealthy obsession with the sport that we love here.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you could have it in like India with cricket. Like they'll like burn effigies of a coach if like the team loses a big
probably
game.
In the sort of middle of the spectrum, really. In the whole, probably some places where they go a bit more crazy than they do in Melbourne for footy. But yeah, like I think that was for me, looking back on it, and sort of something that pissed me off the most was just how obsessed the media seemed to be. It seemed to I seemed to have a bit of I had a personal interest in it. It was my club, so I would probably like read every page that I could that had something on it. So I was sort of feeding into it myself. But yeah, I was like also simultaneously kind of pissed off at that. That there was so much to look at. Like, oh fuck, of course I'm going to look at it if it's there.
Yeah,
I need to just be a bit more self-disciplined and say, don't. And obviously, same should go for everybody. Have that sort of self-discipline. But the fact that it was just kept being fed was crazy. That was one of the things that I was completely frustrated by.
I mean, in it's easily the biggest scandal in Australian sporting history. Like, if you look at other big ones like sandpaper in cricket that happened a few years ago. There's like the fine cotton scandal in horse racing from the early 80s, which is like probably the most famous one before that. I don't know if you know that one, but like there was this...
Was that in Queensland?
Yeah. There was this fairly shit horse called Fine Cotton, right? And that got a run in a reasonably big race, and it involved a lot of racing's elites at the time. They basically found a better horse that had similar markings.
Yes.
And then ended up painting its legs white with paint, and like got busted pretty quickly. And it was famous because it was so amateur.
Right.
And because there were so many high-ups
Such a big
involved.
discrepancy between the imposter and the original. Yeah.
But that was probably the biggest scandal before this one.
Right.
And like, it's not talked about much
tiny
these
potatoes
days.
in comparison.
Yeah.
I do remember I watched a little documentary about that. But yeah, you're right. Like, it was the biggest thing that ever happened in Australian sport. And yeah, so you can see the interest. And you can understand it. But it just sort of went like way too far. Like a lot of interesting media stories do. But yeah, obviously some bad shit happened. So that was like sort of what I'm left with. Now, if we go back to I suppose the first, like, maybe turnaround, like the first kind of pivot point, or what I would kind of say is a pivot point, was like flipping from Essendon and the bad guys here, which was perhaps the prevalent narrative at the time for the most of the investigation, until, and lucky I did my review the other day, because I've forgotten about a bunch of the timeline here. The tribunal and the findings of the tribunal. So the investigation, the SADA investigation, they do their thing. They recommend, or pardon me, I don't know if they recommend anything, but whatever they did, their investigation led to the AFL tribunal handing down their judgment. Yeah. And their judgment was players are innocent. So your thoughts, firstly. We've had a year and a half, I think, at this point, maybe a little bit longer, maybe 2 years of this story. And then, okay, all right, all said and done, Essendon is innocent.
Yeah. So
what do you reckon of that?
Well, I mean, it's in the AFL's interest to clear one of their biggest money-making clubs of any scandal. But I mean, I think after that was when like WADA objected and said, "Hang on, they've broken the rules here."
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to the.
But at the time, I thought that no, that's bullshit. They're not innocent. Like,
so you were incensed that they
not
got
incensed, but like, I just thought it was bullshit.
You thought they were getting away with it here.
Yeah, there are rules that have to be followed, and they didn't follow the rules.
But then the governing body that knew that sport, that knew that code,
being the AFL.
Well, the ones that people cared about, like, they knew what they knew. They were told what they were told, and they thought, no, the players are innocent.
But they're not independent.
Well, they've got interests both for and against having them punished, let's say.
What interest would they have for them being punished?
Some sort of vague claim of being sort of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Sort of fair,
being
fairness,
seen to be impartial.
Impartial, right. Sort of, exactly, impartial, being impartial, and maybe just the kind of illusion of that. The thin veil of impartiality. Is maybe what they stood to gain from handing down a punishment. Sure. Okay, so so from the pro Essendon camp, that was, of course, the day that we had been waiting for. I remember doing a quick Photoshop, which was, do you remember the hurricane? Denzel Washington film. The scene at the end where he's found to be innocent, serving all those years. Completely inappropriate to trivialize the experience of Reuben the Hurricane Carter, but it was sort of fitting. And I just didn't change the head or anything. I just put it like a photoshopped a Essendon jersey on Reuben Carter. Because that was his day and we got our day. And we were found innocent that day. And
did you perhaps celebrated too early?
Well, we celebrated the findings of innocence, and we thought that was that. We thought that was that, and I thought that justice had been served. Like, yes, that's fair enough. Like, okay, the bad man was Dank, the bad man was Robinson, but really it was Stephen Dank, and that's who did the dirty. That's who dogged us. So throw them under the bus. Let's punish them. They're the ones. They deserve to be under the bus there. But let's not harm these players because they didn't know. And that's how I felt about it. That's pretty much what I think it was. So when that was found, or when that innocent finding came through from the tribunal, it was just music to our ears. We really wanted that to be the case, and it was the case. But then, not sure how long, but perhaps 30, perhaps 60 days after that, somewhere around there, the WADA appeal came through. So that was the complete not complete reversal, but we weren't out of the woods yet.
Yeah.
So WADA comes through, they appeal the tribunal's finding, and it goes to the Court of Arbitration of Sport.
Yep.
In Geneva?
In The Hague.
Yeah. So this was like, oh, what? At this point, it's like, what's going on? What I didn't like about it at this point was, who are these European assholes getting involved?
Racist?
Well, not really. Who are these European assholes getting their grubby mitts on our game that they've got no interest in? Why do they care? Who are they? Get away from us, basically. What was when they appealed, what was your impression?
You can say you don't like that, the European assholes, but the AFL is part of that system, right? Because they're signatories to the WADA Code, and the judicial process in the WADA Code goes all the way up. The peak court is Court for Arbitration for Sport. So if you sign up to that code, that's the system, the appellate system you follow.
Right, yeah. So, okay, sure. So they do that then. All right, they go to the CAS. The CAS, I remember keep calling it the CAS.
And you get the finding that you don't want.
That bad finding. Which was 34 players found guilty and suspended for 2 years.
Yep.
2 seasons. Which one was backdated or whatever, because they were only out for 1 season.
Right, yeah, okay.
Which was 2016.
Yeah.
And they were back in 2017.
Yeah.
So that was, and when that happened, because that was the top court, you can't go any further than that.
Yeah.
So that's like, okay, that is it.
Game over, man.
Pretty much, yeah. So that then led to 34 current and former Essendon Bombers being suspended for an entire year. And now at that point, James Hird had already served a suspension. He was suspended for the 2014 season
by the AFL.
Right, that was part of the AFL's initial findings of the game in disrepute charge.
Yep.
And a bunch of other, got kicked out of the finals, and a bunch of other stuff as well had happened already. But that was the big one, of course, that the play, like, the whole time as a supporter, the whole time was, okay, we can handle pretty much any punishment except for anything player related.
Yeah.
So it's just that's who we need to be innocent. We need those players to be innocent. They have to be protected. So we could handle, as painful as it was, we can handle getting kicked out of the finals. We can handle the financial damage. That's no big deal. No supporter gives a fuck about that, really. We could handle, even losing Hurdy for a year, because it's like, well, he's got the assistants, they're all still there, and if we're going to be caretaken by Bomber, then shit, that's all good. No worries. Hurdy will be, take a year off and come back. So that 2013 damage, what was sort of player related was the draft picks. which was certainly, I think, if you ask most Essendon supporters, that was probably the big, the one that really hurt in that first blow, was losing the draft picks. But otherwise, it was like, okay, we can weather this.
Yeah.
And if we got through it with just that 2013 damage, I would have thought, we sort of won that.
Sure.
But yeah, the players getting suspended for 2016 was obviously like the biggest thing of that. Yeah. By a country mile. So yeah, but what was fun about that year was it put Essendon in a position that no other club had ever really been in, which was just have a bit of fun this year, you know, like, because you're obviously not going to be competitive.
Yeah.
You're not going to have your systems that you've been building to.
Yeah.
You're not going to have any of that. You're just going to be so, out of your depth that there's no point.
We're just going to go out and play footy and write the season off.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just like, just go have fun. And so Woosha came in that year, or Hoosa came in. And that was the year that Tip and Woody had a breakout.
Yeah.
And like we had like I can't really, I should have done a bit more of a 2016 review. But I remember just the expectation was 0 wins for that year, and we came out of it with 3 wins. And the first one,
did you finish bottom of the ladder?
Yeah, we were bottom on the ladder, but that's how we picked up Andy McGrath, who was a first number 1 draft pick.
Right.
So we were tipped for 0 wins for the season. We managed 3 wins, and the first win was only in round 2 against the D's, who weren't that great at the time. It mustn't have been too great, but that was just such a fun experience, because it's like, we that's all we can do this year is just hope for the rare win. Hope to see some young players get some game time into them, and see just little glimpses of the future. But yeah, there was obviously no huge expectations or anything like that. So to manage 3 wins throughout that season, it was like really special.
Yeah, not bad.
And cool. So then 2016 ends, and the players are back for the 2017 season. And that's pretty much when the saga's all done. Like, there's no more punishments after that. There's no more legal proceedings, other than there might have been some remaining stuff with some work cover stuff dragged on.
Yeah.
Or maybe that finished before, but anyway.
Didn't Dank sue the club or something?
There might have been, and there might have been some other stuff that carried on, was like players. I think some players sued the club for something. Paddy Ryder had some issues with the club. But I think if you want to speak about kind of like successful culture, is Essendon sort of weathering that storm and sort of coming out of it stronger than they had ever been. Because what did happen was, through that time, you can imagine if that was happening to, say, Hawthorn, for instance, they would have seen like just a mass exodus of playing talent, because they would have seen either this is the culture of this club is no good. This is an unsafe workplace. This is a place where I don't feel safe, being around and feeling like I'm being looked after, that my interests are being had in mind, all that sort of stuff. Completely the opposite at Essendon, because
but you don't know that would have happened at another club.
Well, you can safely assume that, I would think.
Why? Well, so what makes you guys special that your players didn't leave, but you're saying like any other club, the players would have all fucked off?
Oh, I think you can probably just look at you can probably just look at a number of factors, but again, being an Essendon supporter, the main one that is attractive is just that historical success of a club that you want to be associated with. So I need to do it for the future episodes, but I'll get the 16 trophies behind me so I can just do that. Because that's what you can always go back to. You can always have that safety. That's always that last one in your arsenal, is that those last 16 in your arsenal.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. That's like, it's that historical sort of success factor. And you just have that that gut feeling as well that, you know, that we would have managed, that we did manage that kind of more deftly and more capably than other clubs could have. Any other clubs probably would have found that they had no sort of, the galvanization factor probably wouldn't have been as strong. Now I said that in the last episode, the galvanization factor. That's what happened. We managed some amazing wins in 2013, 14, and 15. It did coincide. What was so gut-wrenching as an Essendon supporter and as someone who doesn't like Hawthorn is that those really troubling years coincided with some really successful years in Hawthorn. It was hard to see that kind of opposite side of the fence at that time, because that's where, of course, you want to be. I mean, you probably don't need to be going through a supplement saga to be, you know, to not be loving that time. You know, anyone that was competitive at the time probably hated it just as much. But it was very difficult to watch the good times at Hawthorn and the very, very hard times at Essendon. But we were strong. We came out of it really, really strongly. What shows the proof in that is the retention of players that, again, other clubs just would have mismanaged that. They don't have a Dodoro in their HQ. They don't have the you know, the facilities and the culture, that kind of successful winning culture that Essendon do have. Might not have manifested in final success. I mean, 20
you
years,
might have had a winning culture 30 years ago, but I'm not sure you have a winning culture during that time. Or winning is
just not just, you know, September. That's not like, it's not like there's not games to be won in months between March and September. There's winning to be done there. And there's winning that is done there, and Essendon do win at those points in the year. But sure, yeah.
I also wonder,
work on that September factor.
Like you're saying, like Essendon handled it better than other clubs. I wonder if other clubs would have got themselves into the situation in the first place. Like I've often looked at Essendon,
I think others did,
and thought, well, it's never come to light. But I've often looked at Essendon and thought that they sometimes seem to be run like a suburban football club, right? Like it seems to be like a bit of an amateur operation there. Sometimes you have these coterie groups with like too much power, who, you know, advocate for a coach to get the sack, and then eventually they get the sack, and then this fascination with like favourite sons like Hurd, who, let's be honest, was a decent coach but didn't have a fantastic winning record. The saga aside, right? He wasn't some superstar, and you often see that like favourite sons aren't always that good. But you know, the fact that that he hired, and he did hire Duncan Robinson, right? And that you would have thought that at a club that big, that with that much money, it would have been a bit more professional, and you wouldn't have some mad scientist effectively experimenting on players. And in a club that was run a bit more professionally, that would have been nipped in the bud. I wondered that at the time, and I still wonder it a bit now.
I think that's probably, I give you some latitude there. I think if you were a more attentive, if you were more detailed focused club or management team, then you probably wouldn't have found yourself in that situation. What really, and I think it's interesting.
Remember at the time, who was that doctor who was there for years?
Bruce Reid.
Yeah. He had sent a letter to internally at the club saying something's going on here, and it was like effectively ignored.
Pretty much, yeah. And that's what did carry on. That's the other case that remained was Bruce Reid. He was found guilty in whatever he was charged with, but he appealed and he won that appeal. But anyway, I think like my basic point is that, you know, we were able to weather that storm, where other clubs perhaps probably couldn't have weathered it and come out without as little damage as Essendon had.
Like long-term damage.
Long-term damage.
Like if that had been like a North or a St Kilda, then, you know, could they
You're looking at fatalities. You're looking at mergers. You're looking at relocations. You're looking at licenses being revoked. Stuff like the really ugly stuff. Although, I'm not a crystal ball reader. I don't have one with me. Can't say yes or no for sure, but that would be what my gut would say, is that we handled that exceptionally well. And God gives his favorite creatures the biggest tests, or whatever that saying is. And that's the biggest test that any football club has ever had. And, we came out of that really successfully, really strongly. And I think the results are still being felt today. There's certain things that remain with us. One being Stephen Dank somehow still walks the streets of, I think Ascot Vale is where he lives. But for some reason he's still around. Like someone hasn't got him. I don't know how. Because that's who it all goes back to.
Wow, does it? Like, I remember when Hurd got the sack, a lot of Essendon supporters were saying he was made a scapegoat. Do you think that's true?
I think I'm just if you want to just swing your seat around for a second, we've got someone relevant here. Now that's the Terminator.
Termy.
Now in Terminator 2 Judgment Day, do you remember who he goes after, or rather who Sarah Connor goes after? She goes after Miles Bennett Dyson,
the
man
of Skynet,
most directly responsible for the rise of Skynet, the man most directly responsible for the Essendon supplement saga is Stephen Dank.
Is it, or is it the bloke who hired him and put him in that position?
No, it would be the man that put that program in the position. It would be that man.
But if you're the head coach and you hire this guy and Robinson to look after your fitness and nutrition and supplement regime, and they fuck up, aren't you ultimately accountable? If you're at the top of the food chain,
as a senior coach, you have to say that, of course, yeah. But I mean, senior coach delegates responsibilities. Senior coach can't be all over every single medical decision. They add up. That your whole list is.
But you've got to be accountable for that delegation, and he was held accountable for it.
He was held accountable for that delegation, but that delegation is where the real damage was. It was within that. It's all about, I suppose, the governance of your club, the structure of your club, and the management, the hierarchy, and the systems within that. That's what determines who's responsible, really. I think if you want to say that the senior coach is the one. Well, it's not the senior coach that appoints that guy and that appoints these, really crucial positions. I think the senior coach is like another.
But he did appoint them. That's a point. Like he specifically hired them.
Well,
I think maybe under the suggestion of Bomber Thompson as well, because wasn't Robinson at Geelong under Thompson?
Robinson was at Geelong under Thompson.
Yeah.
Stephen Dank
and didn't Thompson
involved?
Correct me if I'm wrong. I can't really remember.
Footy club.
Did Thompson come in to Essendon as like an assistant to Hurd because Hurd was inexperienced? Was that?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. And then Thompson said, "Hey, I've got these two dudes.
No. He said he's got this one dude.
Right. And then the one dude bought Dank.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The weapon was, I don't know, some Geelong affiliate. I don't know how Bomber Thompson
He's like he was just a fitness coach down there.
I guess just a fitness coach and an unremarkable fitness coach. No one, I think, knew of him or other than coaches and stuff. But what's his name? Dank was with the Cronulla Sharks the year before he was with Essendon.
Sharkies.
Yeah, so he was
team.
He was involved up there.
Yeah.
So he hadn't had any involvement with any AFL.
No, but he's got a professional sports background.
Does have a sports background. So how Robinson knew Dank, I don't know. There's obviously records of that, but I don't know. I won't get into that. But that's where the responsibility lies. That's where the punishment should have. Like if this was in a vacuum, and of course it was affected by the cultural, like we discussed earlier, the cultural obsession with footy that Melbourne has. If this was in a vacuum, I think the culpable parties come down and the responsibilities come down to those two individuals, particularly Dank. The players had such little culpability and involvement, sort of like, decision-making involvement in that they were unfairly punished, in my opinion. Shouldn't have been slugged with that suspension. Shouldn't have been tarnished with that, because as soon as that suspension, even if it was for one game, they were always going to be called drug cheats. Like if that's the punishment they got. So that was slugged with that kind of that X against their name, that asterisk against.
I mean,
their name.
I think they are culpable as well.
Well, I don't think they're very culpable.
I mean, they were being injected repeatedly by Dank, right? Now, when ASADA goes out to test players have to fill out a doping control form and basically say, what supplements are you taking, what vitamins are you taking. They didn't list any of those. None of them listed it on the doping control forms. And it's they talk about this issue of strict liability. You're as a player, as a professional sportsman in one of those codes, you're liable for everything you take, right? Regardless of whether someone tells you to take it. Now, these guys are all pretty well paid, right? They can go out and get their own nutritionist, right? Talk to their own doctor outside the club and say, hey, is this right? Should I be doing it?
Sure.
One of my brothers was a Olympian. He was a pro athlete for a long time, but never made any money out of it, right? He
shout out Chris.
Yeah, was never paid a cent, right?
Yep.
But he would still go out to other doctors and stuff like that when the AIS or something was putting him on a supplement or a vitamin plan. Right. He'd go out and get independent advice. Now, that's someone who makes no money. These guys are professional, like legit professional. It's their full-time job. And they're not going to get a second opinion when some doctor comes in and starts doing what's a pretty radical plan, supplemental plan that they've never seen before. They're like, hey, I'm going to shoot you up with a needle every week. Oh, yeah, okay. Come on. You've got to take some personal responsibility. Now, whether that's worth 2 years, perhaps not, but that's the way the drug code works, because you can't. They can't every single case try to work out whether you meant it or not. It's like these are the rules. If you break them, it's 4 years. If there's mitigating circumstances, there's 2, and they gave them the mitigating circumstances and gave them 2.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's all well and good. That's all fine. I think it was, it really just came down to, you can say, all the whole program stuff. It really just came down to the status of one drug, the thymosin drug. And everything else was fine. So really, you could say that the program was fucked. But if that's the case, if it really was just that one drug that they got pinged for in the end, then maybe obviously what the program was did veer a little bit too close to the edge. But yeah, it probably wasn't as bad as people were saying it was, with all these like outrageous injections.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Yeah,
but yeah.
The speculation was probably worse than the crime.
Yeah. And the speculation was worse than the crime. And as I said before, the fallout that was just completely sort of self-generated, in that the own football industry generated it. The media obsession. I don't want to get back into it again because I already have sort of, ranted about it.
But that's what the AFL is now, right? Like,
yeah,
it's
that's what I
money,
think it's superseded its kind of next stage.
Yeah,
into
all its money comes from the media, right?
Yeah.
It's TV rights.
Yep.
And the TV rights are only worth so much because there is so much surrounding media, like the papers and the radio and all that kind of stuff. So, they've got rich off this, big fat tiger, and then the tiger's turned around and bitten them. So, live by the sword, die by the sword.
That's pretty much it. And they do have an unhealthy relationship with media.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened in the professional era of AFL. Really in the 21st century, you could almost say. But it started in the 90s.
I saw an article yesterday about the fixture being uneven. And like even this year, like there's some team who plays a bunch of other teams twice but doesn't play Freo until the final round or something like that, right? And there was a quote from the AFL head of fixtures that said the number one priority in the AFL fixture is maximising broadcast viewership and attendances.
Yeah.
And like fairness would be like well down.
Yeah.
So if your number one priority in your fixture, which is basically, it's the core of the game, if your number one priority is basically media dollars.
Yeah.
It says a lot.
It's a big problem. Yeah, it is a big problem. Fixturing. There's a lot of people call for a even approach, which is play everyone once. And that is probably as egalitarian as you can make
and
it.
then play another bunch of people a second time, right? So you can get a longer season, but play everybody once first, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. But I mean, with the number of, the number of teams adding up, and once Tasmania come in, we're close to 20 teams. That's nearly a 20-round season.
But the AFL would never go to a 20-round season because then they're cutting the number of games by 20% and therefore the amount of revenue by 20%.
Well, you might have said that 10 years ago, but these days with the AFLW needing some support, that could supplement that shorter AFL season. With whatever you want to do there, it's obviously a big conversation what you could do there to help the AFLW kind of back end, if you want to say, or maybe front end, that shorter.
Yeah, but I couldn't, I think that would be a good thing to do, but I couldn't see the AFL in a million years taking a hit to the hip pocket to support AFLW by giving them some clear air. Not in a million years.
Yeah, perhaps not with this current regime.
Well, it's always the same regime, right? It's just another one of the footy dudes who gets rolled out.
Well, that's it. Like, we've probably sort of...
They're like Sith Lords with, like, apprentices, right? Like, first you had, like, Demetrio. He's, like, the Sith Lord. Then his apprentice is McLaughlin. And then his new one's Dylan.
There's always two. A master and an
they
apprentice.
Go, we'll do a worldwide search for our next CEO. And then they appoint them to as number 2 the whole time.
I don't know too much about this new guy, Andrew Dillon. The old dude, McLaughlin, was around for a long, long time, and before him, Demetriou was around for a long, long time before him. I was going to sneeze. I'm going to sneeze. I'll change it to you. Pardon me.
Professional.
There we go. First sneeze on the pod. It only took a couple of hours. It's good. Pretty good run. There we go. Back again. The new guy is this is only his second season, I believe, or was it his first season?
Don't know.
I can't remember. But yeah, must have been last season his first one. But anyway, yeah, he's he hasn't had any big tests yet. Where there's a big story that everyone's looking to the management of AFL for as a key player. Of course the saga that we've already talked about. The first press conference, Demetriou was there. That was probably his, and that was like later in his administration.
Yeah, it was towards the end, wasn't it?
I think the changeover happened to Gillen during the saga, and so a lot of his early days were kind of marked by his management of the saga. So there's nothing really happening in the AFL right now that's causing the head office to be speaking, to be talking up, to be other than like current sort of head
people whinging about umpiring again.
Yeah, always the case. Although sometimes it occurs more than not. But yeah, the state of umpiring always a story. I suppose with Tasmania coming in, that'll be a big factor in Andrew Dillon's regime and how he deals with that. That's probably you can't sort of predict stuff that'll happen, but obviously with Tasmania coming in, I think it's 2020.
I mean, that's a disgraceful proposition in itself, that the AFL's like basically extorting the Tasmanian and federal government, saying if you want a Tasmanian team, you have to kick in. I think they want 700 million from the feds and the Tassie government, and the AFL will kick in 50 million.
Wow.
So 700 million from taxpayers, or they won't give you a team. This is the sporting organisation with the biggest TV media rights deal in Australian sport. They're the richest sport by a mile, and they want $700 million from taxpayers. They're already publicly subsidised because they get huge tax breaks. So taxpayers are already paying for it. Why should that sport get a fucking red cent, right? At AFL level, give it to domestic, like metropolitan country footy, or like other sports, fucking netball, table tennis, I don't know, like these smaller ones. Why is like the AFL like This is why they're just such a disgusting organisation. Like this Tasmania thing, just give Tassie a team. They've got a couple of stadiums down there. They're like, no, we want a state-of-the-art one with a roof. Fuck off. You don't need that. It's Tasmania. Like, they're not big enough to justify that expense. And if the AFL really wants it, then they should pay for the stadium themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. They are, they're such a huge industry. And they're like, again, with Melbourne's obsession with them, they're like a giant, a roaming giant that can do no wrong almost to its adoring
or they can do
subjects.
whatever they want without consequence.
Whatever they want without consequence. They can get away with bloody murder. Look, to be honest, a lot of the management factor within AFL, I don't pay much attention to. I probably should pay a little bit more attention to it because it is,
No, don't, because it'll just piss
turn
you off.
me into you.
Yeah, you'll turn you into me. Yeah. And there's only enough room for one people's champ.
That's right. Can't all be the people's champ. But we can all be salty. That's true. It sounds like we should switch right now. You're the more salty one because of the conversation turning to the management of the AFL. Now, you can say all that, and absolutely, I would agree with pretty much everything you're saying there. Like, there's some very grubby tactics going on. There's money changing hands that really shouldn't be, really should be directed elsewhere and to more worthy outlets. Yeah. Pardon me. So, absolutely agree with all that. But can you divorce all of that with the appreciation of the game? And do you?
I mean, some people can. I can't. And also, I don't like the game as much as it used to be played. It's
too soft now. Is that what you? Is that
a little bit of that? I think it's overcoached.
Overcoached. So what do you like? What did you like about it when you were a footy fan? What was the? Because we do
going way back, it was more free flowing. You had stay-at-home forwards. You'd have your. I'm
talking more fundamental to that because you have spoken about this from a deep level as a appreciator of all sports. I believe poetry was a sort of a kind of medium that you've explored before.
Have I?
Yeah, I like sport. I think
those little haikus we were doing.
I like sport. The crack of the cricket ball. Now I don't know if I should have got that so I could bring it up, but I'm pretty sure that AFL or footy didn't get a line in that really lovely poem by a young David Erickson, which we'll have to read on our. Should have had that lined up.
You'd have to dig a fair bit back through the chat for that.
We'll have a look. I'm sure we'll find it again if you can send that into Salty in the Champ.
Sounds like a Hilton job, that one.
He'll have it. He'll have it on bookmark probably. But if you could think, maybe, sorry to put you on the spot here, but if you could think of a simple line, the something of the something with footy, and again in the sort of the days when you were a fan, what was it that you liked the most about the game back in the day?
I don't know. It was just more free flowing.
The free of the flow.
Yeah. The
freedom of the flow.
Yeah, something like that.
The zoning of the player.
Yeah.
The zone. You liked zoning?
Well, I mean, maybe zoning's where it started to go wrong. I don't know. I preferred when players played more to position and it was a more free flowing game rather than the rolling scrum. It tended to become
too much congestion.
Too many. Well, players become generic, right? Half of them are midfielders now. They're all 6 foot tall, 83 kilos. It's too much of the same.
You don't get that sort of versatility that you used to get in shape and size of a footy team.
Yeah, you'll never get a plugger or a Piggy Dunstall.
You don't see folks like that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, they could be kicking 20 goals a week in the VFL, but if they don't meet the skin folds, they're never going to get a crack at AFL.
True.
It's this athlete obsession rather than football skill obsession. And I mean, look at some of the goal kicking these days. It's a bit...
True.
It's not what it was.
Yeah, you've got Coleman medalists that are kicking
60,
half tons.
70, yeah.
and yeah, it's a far cry from the days of 100 in a season and running onto the ground.
Yeah.
It's trippy to think that back when he was a Hawk, Buddy was the last to do that 100 in a season. And
wasn't
of course,
so long ago, really.
Well, I think
13,
that was
14 years.
Yep. 08, I think that year was, and
16
then
years, yeah.
And then in 2022 was his 1000th.
Yeah.
And that was a very special one as well. So the last two occasions, the last two ground invasions were Buddy Franklin's. But you see it all. You used to see it all the time, and that was, I think, another thing that has been divorced from the footy experience is that sort of like traditions like that. Like as it's been sanitized, as it's become corporatized.
Why aren't the goal umpires wearing like butcher's coats anymore?
Yeah.
Bring back the butcher's coats.
I mean, and the amount of people that you've got out on the ground, on the fence as well.
Yeah.
Like back in the day, it used to be a couple of cops roaming around.
Yeah.
And now it's like, it's you see security guards lining up.
40 security guards and 20 people running drinks bottles. And,
So it doesn't look the way it used to look. I suppose we've lost a few things there, but I would say that perhaps there's maybe other things that have been added to the cultural experience of footy that there weren't, back when we were sort of growing up with it. When I was, like a kid, like an 8-year-old, Auskick started. Or pardon me, at that point it was Vic Kick. It was still called Vic Kick.
I mean, that's great. Auskick's great. Yeah.
And that's meant that like that's been majorly sponsored now, and does wonders for grassroots footy.
Yeah.
But then we're sort of like opening it up to more sort of culturally kind of progressive endeavors as well. Support for communities that need support through awareness. Now you might say that that's all well and good, and it doesn't really, but I think that's like anything.
Sometimes, I think that's like the AFL, like paying lip service to it and not really having a fair income crack at it. Like I mentioned the other time, like Wayne Carey, right? Fucking glasses women, but then the AFL will say, "Oh, we're against violence to women." But
I think eventually they realised that because he's no longer. No longer.
I think it became too unpalatable for Channel 7.
Yeah, it became too.
Which is like a big call.
Too hard to avoid. Too hard to ignore. Yeah. Any big fuck up these days, you'll get caught for. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I reckon that's good. I reckon it's actually good if you pay if there are consequences for your actions. So. Like if we're talking about the saga, I can sort of creatively kind of, duck and weave around that. But no, you should pay for your you should, there should be consequences for your actions. And like you can't sort of, be two-faced on that. If you do have someone like Wayne Carey on the bankroll, and doing like what Carlton did last week, which was that violence against women game. I'm not sure if that's what it was called, but they're getting on the agenda with that. So sometimes it is just like you do need to start somewhere, and it doesn't really do a lot. You can't sort of put its results into a kind of qualifiable or quantifiable kind of data set, but you got to start somewhere, and you got to do something. You can only do what you can do. So I think sometimes maybe it seems like lip service, but sometimes it does maybe make a difference. And I think the fact that that the AFLW is a thing now wasn't we might say we enjoyed the game much more when it was more free flowing, and when we had folks like Plugger out there. We got not to be I don't want to sound offensive about it or anything, but we got blokes like, or we got gals like, I should say, Plugger,
Yeah.
In the AFLW, where it's
Yeah.
not as sanitized and
Yeah.
corporatized.
It's
more
less
of that.
professional.
Yeah.
It's less coached.
And that's something we didn't have, 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like you might say we've lost that with the men's comp, but there's a lot of stuff in the women's comp that is evocative of those sort of 80s and 90s.
Yeah, because there's less money in it. I've always said, the more money goes into sport, the worse the sport becomes.
Yeah, there's something in that. And there's the more money that goes into the Salty and the Champ podcast, the worse it becomes. So we're starting off very low budget and very high quality. I would hope. So yeah, that's a good agenda item. We've gone through the running of the AFL, the new CEO's report.
I think there's still a little bit to go through there.
We might
Perhaps
revisit
we can come
it.
back to that, yeah.
We might revisit it. Well, that will be an ongoing topic, because the AFL is always going to be going.
Yeah,
it's always going to be run by somebody.
Yeah,
there's
always a lot of shit fuckery going on down there.
Until we get a revolution, it's going to have the same problems that it's always had. So yeah, we'll have to come back to that. This episode has gone for an hour, if you can believe it or not. Yeah, we've been going last one for an hour.
So it's a big commitment to ask out of the Wapperinos.
This should last them until almost into the end of July.
Yeah,
we still haven't gone through the full agenda yet. It's getting late in the evening. Well, that's probably a good time to call it a day on the third episode.
Yep.
So we'll sign off. But maybe would that be the last for this recording?
I think so.
The last for today.
Yeah, it's past my bedtime.
Yeah, and you've got work tomorrow.
Yes.
I've started my mid-year break.
Yeah, lucky for some.
Get into teaching kids. You get some decent time off. Perhaps if that is our last, we'll go for a little bit longer, just with our sort of final highlight, because you said that you you did have a highlight. For the week.
Do you have that ready to go? Are we able to play that?
Actually, if you want to, I don't know what the highlight is. You mentioned.
I sent it to you on Messenger. It's a clip of Gideon Haigh, who's my favourite cricket journalist on ABC Offsiders this week.
You introduce it for us while I tee it up.
He was giving Gillon McLachlan both barrels following Gillon's announcement that he's heading off as the head of Tabcorp.
That's right. Yep.
And Gillon released
dirty
fairly typically disgusting, corporately written announcement that he was going across there, and Gideon gave him both barrels.
What a joker! What a joker! So there it is. So just looking it up now. It's it's a post on x.com.
Yep. Now, for the site formerly known as Twitter, as everybody.
That's it. What I'll do is I'll play it without I'll play it with the audio that'll come through on our mics, but what I'll do is I'll overlay it so that you folks at home get a good view of that. So sorry, I'll just pause it at the start. So who's this guy again? This is
Gideon Haigh. He's probably the top cricket journalist in Australia, but he ventures into other sports.
And this is him giving it to Gillon McLachlan.
Yep.
Last week, Gillon McLachlan appointed as CEO of...
Oh, hang on. I can probably change the scene in OBS. Okay, sorry. We're finally there. Give us a break. It's our first few episodes.
Last week, Gillon McLachlan appointed as CEO of Tabcorp, and I love the way in which he responded. He said, "It's a legacy Australian brand in the entertainment space. I resonate with both of these things." Wouldn't we all like to resonate with our spaces as lucratively as Gillon McLachlan? So another dramatisation of the lush, matey world of sport, gaming and broadcasting. Here's a man who helped sport and sports broadcasting develop their parallel addictions to gambling money. And gambling is, as smoking was, a slow-acting poison that uses sport to mask its taste. Let's not forget that.
Whoa. Some pretty harsh words there, but I'd agree with that. Fucking gambling. It's a absolute. Oh, I'm gonna stop that. It's insidious. Speaking of ways in which the AFL has become, has deteriorated in recent times. Gambling has a huge hand in that, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's they have every time you look at even you go to the AFL fixture on the AFL app, it shows you the odds under each team. It's just everywhere all the time, nonstop.
You can't fucking escape it.
Yeah.
So that's Davey's highlight is Gillum and Lachlan copping it. I haven't really thought of one. I've been caught out here. I guess my highlight is just starting this pod. This endeavor, having some time off to do it as well. Getting it all set up here, but I think it's going to make a difference in the lives of those that are close to us. Maybe just a slight difference, but maybe they'll enjoy it. I hope they do. And yeah, we'll probably do another recording in the next few weeks, hopefully.
Yep, I think so.
We'll have some more things to talk about.
Yep.
We'll see how the reception goes to the first few.
We'll see if the Bunbury shit the bed when it gets close to the pointy end of the season.
How we go. Yeah, we'll see how we go. But that's all coming up. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the first few people. Any final words, Dave? We're finishing off now.
Not really. Thanks for watching / listening. And see you next time.
That'll do us, everybody. Good night, and we'll be back again.
Thanks all.
See you later.
Thank you for tuning in today, and thanks to each of you for being a member of the Hot Whoppers community. You can contact the podcast at saltyandthechamp@gmail.com. Salty was dressed by Kmart. Champ was dressed by Gasman. Music used was written and performed by Zenivers, of Silverman Sound Studios. That is it for now. Don't forget to tune in again next time. I love you, goodbye.